Hello? Hello? Oh, I hear myself. Ah! Oh, I hear my. Can everyone hear me? Yeah? Good. Hey guys, what time is it? 2:05? Okay. Let me switch over. Hey everyone. Welcome. Um so today's stream, I'm not even going to dilly-dally. I am just gonna straight up say today's stream is going to be possibly all over the place because this week was kind of the first week that I went back into my full-on research mode for really a variety of different topics. Some of the topics I don't even have the tabs open correctly for, but we will be discussing so many things. The main focus I want to talk about is an event called the DSCC AR/VR display forum that happened this week. A lot of companies came together and talked a lot about concepts such as micro OLED and even micro LED, which is different than micro OLED. I don't know how many times I need to say that, but I do because there's people on the internet spreading misinformation about that. So really, like, get ready. It's going to be a lot. Honestly, it's going to be a lot of information. My brain, my brain right now is already at a point where it's like kind of overload. So I'm going to do my best to explain everything that's happened this week and everything that I found. But it's not just this that we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about literally everything, I think. We're going to be touching on the Apple VR headset a little bit. We're going to be talking about the Sony PSVR 2. We're going to be talking about, we're going to be covering a little bit of John Carmack's notes. If you watched last week in Connect, he always does a annual stream where he goes over a bunch of topics. But because they limit his time, he uploaded all of his notes that he was reading off of. And some of the things in those notes he did not actually touch on in his actual live stream. So we'll touch on that. We'll touch on a brand new technology, a brand new reprojection technology that I talked a little bit about and I was tweeting about last week. It was probably the biggest announcement of Connect of anything else because there wasn't that much. But it talks about increasing the performance values, basically increasing the performance of the Quest headsets by up to 20 or 70%. 70, not 20. I don't know where I was thinking 20. So, yes. Everything. We also have some stuff related to Deckard that I want to talk about, but that also relates to the displays a little bit. So yeah, let's get right into it. So, AR/VR display forum happened this week by DSCC. This is a bunch of consultants and analysts that are very good at seeing what companies, really mostly in China, but really across the world, are dedicating their manufacturing lines to. And this entire event was heavily, like, one day was focused on micro OLED, mostly for VR, and a whole other day was talking about micro LED. I'm not spending any time on micro LED. It's still very far away for the use case of VR. It's mostly focused on AR purposes, and I do not have the brain capacity right now to talk about that. So, let's begin. So this is going to be a lot of slides. I'm not going to be showing everything. I'm going to be showing just the highlights that I found that was talked about during this event, and I really hope you will find it interesting. We're going to start with the displays. So so this is just kind of a recap of sort of what technologies display-wise are really controlling the VR market right now. We have obviously LCD and basic OLED, and the near future configurations for VR and pass-through AR through VR is OLED on silicon, which is also known as micro OLED. That's what I've been saying for a while. Probably, like, well, not a while, but it's been like more than a few months now. OLED microdisplays is a term that's become almost a meme on my channel, but it's true. It's really a lot of investments are being put into these displays. And they talk a little bit about optics and where that's going. Obviously, folded optics, also known as pancake lenses, are very important, especially if you want to make the form factors smaller and more beneficial. There's not much to talk about on this slide here. This is just really, it's really actually the display industry is basically in a really good point right now. This year, despite all the issues with like chip shortages and everything, this year was the highest profit and revenue for display companies ever. Record year. It's gotten to the point where it's like so crazy that we actually have too many LCDs on the market because they manufactured so many to keep up with the demand. But it got to the point where there's now even a surplus of LCD displays to begin with, which drives down costs for LCDs. But that's not important. We don't care much about LCDs that much. All right. Not much to say on this slide, but again, just confirming that there's a lot of stuff going on in the background in manufacturing facilities to make sure that they are ready to produce a lot of next generation OLED, including OLED on silicon, to make sure that the next generation VR headsets will be able to implement these display types better. And we're going to get into even more complexities about how there's actually different types of micro OLED, which that's going to be very confusing, but I'm going to do my best. This was a talk from Applied Materials. We're going to be talking about them later on too. Applied Materials is very important to a lot of things I have to say later on. They are a very important company for manufacturing a lot of these technologies. And he was talking mostly here about AR lenses, but a lot of these lens technologies will be also usable for VR. A lot of it's related to actually meta lenses, which are, how do I explain it? So basically, the best way to explain meta lenses is, hold on, let me use the word I used on Twitter so I don't forget. So nano imprinting, it's basically very similar to how semiconductors are already built, except they're doing this on actual lenses themselves to get like better performance, more features and functionality out of them. Nano imprinting and all this stuff in meta lenses are very similar to the stuff that we've been talking about Imagine Optics, which was the company that Valve funded to build next generation lenses that could even potentially do varifocal without moving parts. You need nano imprinting and meta surfaces to be able to do that. So very, very big. It is reassuring to see Bradley is not going crazy in micro OLED is the future. Yes, they literally spent almost zero time talking about LCD during this AR VR forum, because everyone knows that it's just like it will be. So we'll get to that in a minute. We'll get to that in a minute. But again, this is flat optics for near infrared. Again, this is all related to being able to do nano imprinting on lenses themselves. I need to spend more time understanding it because it's very complex, but just think the same ways that silicon semiconductors are made, they're doing that for lenses. Just kind of, that's like the basics kind of. What is nano imprinting? Again, it's just like using that, what I just said. I really can't go into it without confusing people, for sure. It's literally like, it's literally it's literally making nanostructures that can manipulate photons. I've been talking about the idea of manipulating photons for a while, because if you've been watching my Deckard stuff, I've been talking about Imagine Optics, and that's what their lenses do. They manipulate the photons before they reach your eyes. And they can even be activated and deactivated with some software and other tricks if they're really that advanced. So yeah, just a lot of stuff related to that. Isn't this extremely expensive? Well, the concept is every company that wants to work on this, except I'm going to get to it later, but GoArtech, I was just told today, early this morning, because it was, China time, I was told that GoRTech, which is pretty much the biggest VR headset manufacturer in the world right now, they even manufacture the Quest 2s, and they worked with Qualcomm to actually make the reference design for the XR2 headsets, and it's even rumored that they also produce a lot of the stuff for the Valve Index, except that was never fully confirmed, and I'm not completely sure if that's true. But just to give you an idea, apparently their nano, I was told that their nano imprinting stuff for lenses is almost completely done, and they have a huge production line just for that. So again, it sounds expensive, and it is, but as companies invest in it, and more companies do it, that's how costs ultimately come down, right? Mass production will drive down costs. Exactly. Manipulate dues, yeah. Okay, this was something really interesting I have to talk about. So again, these people at DSCC, they do what I do, except they are paid way better. How do I know they're paid way better? Well, it costs $300 just to access this event and watch these presentations. But like in general, they're this is like a full-time thing for them. They're very good at what they do. So I think it's very beneficial to report what they say, even if I don't have much research behind it. But I want to talk about what they said about Apple's quote-unquote upcoming headset. That was really interesting. They personally believe that the headset, the Apple HMD, will combine 3 displays, 2 micro OLED that will be produced or designed from Sony. I'm not sure if it's produced or designed. And it will be paired with a 1 single OLED standard panel at the background. They say it's very likely they're mixing these 2 types to do something very similar to what Vario has been doing for years. This might sound very crazy and confusing. What Vario does... Hold on. I need to breathe when I talk so much. What Vario does is they have... So it's different from Vario, because Vario still has 2 high-resolution LCD displays that cover the entire FOV. But on the bottom, as you can see in this picture here, they have a small micro OLED display that is like projected with a waveguide. And the very center of your peripheral in Vario headsets are like retina resolution, like 60 pixels per degree, but only in that one spot. And they believe that Apple's doing the same thing, but with full-on OLED, both OLED big panel and OLED small panels. And it made a lot of sense to me, by the way, when they said this, because I was literally talking to someone a couple months back, and they were talking about how Apple, the company, actually ordered a bunch of Vario headsets in years past. They probably ordered it to reverse engineer the concept for themselves, honestly. Like, when I heard this, I literally thought back to my discussion a couple months ago. I was like, whoa. Qualcomm are the largest maker of mobile chipsets for smart birds. Yes. And this is a good chart that a lot of companies like to use. Which technology will dominate AR VR? In 2020, by 2026, silicon OLED on silicon will be one of the biggest dominating AR VR headsets. LCD will still hold a huge lead over, because basically what sounds like this makes sense. For a while, LCD is going always to be the low-cost VR option. Like, you're not going to see like a Quest 2 or Quest 3, like a basic tier Quest 3. You're probably not going to see micro OLED. But like the higher end headsets like Project Cambria, that would be the kind of stuff you would see micro OLED for quite a few years, because that's just reality. Oh, Vario is 70 ppd center? My bad. Vario is 70 ppd, not 60. Again, retina resolution is what people say for that. This slide, I don't want to cover too much. Just some new players, new manufacturers in micro OLED. But this right here should tell you how much investments have been put into micro OLED. China, the country of China, has made large investments in micro OLED fabrications in the last 5 years. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. We're also going to be talking about the SIA display, which is the display that is used in the Arpara VR headset. You might have seen some first looks from MRTV. He's been talking about the Arpara VR headset, and he was talking about how amazing the display quality is. And it is amazing because it is micro OLED. But what if I told you that the micro OLED that headset's using is actually considered the low quality version of micro OLED? We're going to get more into that later. But imagine what a high quality micro, just start thinking in your head, if that is a low quality micro OLED, what the heck can a high quality micro OLED be like? And I'm going to explain that in a minute. 30 hertz. Well, Arpara shipped the headset, the Arpara VR headset, with a old cable that won't be included with the after they kickstart it. When they have the USB-C to DisplayPort 1.4, they'll be able to reach the 5K resolution at 70 hertz. So there was yeah. And again, that headset was not designed for VR originally, that version. There's two Arpara headsets. There's one that has standalone XR2 built in, which is totally meant for VR, like full-on 6 UF VR. But the one that MRTV got and Thrill Seeker got, though, that was originally designed to be just a media viewer. So not really designed for VR, but they are shoehorning VR into it. So yes. What is micro OLED? If you've been watching my channel for a few months at least, you probably know what micro OLED is, but this is a very good example of the different versions of micro OLED. Yes, there are different versions, and a lot of them is based on how they're made. Copen, I think we should come back to this. The one I want to really note here is Sony makes their micro OLED in a very interesting way. They basically use micro lenses to increase the brightness of their OLED pixels, which they're white pixels. For Copen and Sony use white pixels with color filters. But it's really interesting, Sony uses actual tiny, microscopic lenses to magnify the brightness of the white OLED before it passes through color filters. I think that's a really interesting concept. Imagine, though, they do RGB patterning, which we'll talk about a lot very soon. The 30 hertz is limitation of the USB-C to the USB-C cable. Yes, exactly. This was a slide that was presented by someone from GoArtec. Again, GoArtec is the huge VR manufacturer. Huge. They're huge. Again, they manufacture a lot of the Quest 2s, and they created the Qualcomm XR2 reference design. And they talk about the future compute platforms. And why I think this is very important is because you see these two here. Or really all three of these, mostly these two, these are discussing concepts I've been talking about related to split rendering. Split rendering is, a lot of stuff I've been talking about for split rendering has mostly been talking about the edge computing case, which again, that's like an actual PC or VR station in your room that you can either wirelessly or wired connect to and do different tasks, different compute offloading to get better quality stuff. But the very long-term goal is to be able to scale the idea of split rendering to the cloud. But that is I don't expect that to be reliable anytime soon, because as it says here, the infrastructure required to do cloud-based split rendering is ridiculous. And especially in US, where there's a lot of places that don't even have fiber internet, most places. Yeah, I don't really see that becoming... We'll see. Yes. So before we get into this, because this is what really is the hype thing, I think. We got a lot of great specifications of the 4K VR design from Imagine. I want to take a moment to say, split rendering, micro OLED, pancake lenses. Those are the three big things I've been like talking about on my channel for a while. So when I was able to just come and like watch these presentations and look through these slides and they all say the same thing I've been saying, I feel very relieved. Honestly, very relieved. All right. So let us, I remember Abrash saying they could do 140 FOV that was horizontal. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Oh, that was, oh, you're talking about the prediction. So that prediction was made in 2016, back when, this was back when Oculus was still a hardware name, and when they were still focused on PCVR. They are not focused on either of those things I just said. So the 140 horizontal FOV, I do think some companies will reach that this year or next year. I shouldn't say next year. But they will not be it will not be Project Cambria. I guarantee it will not be. Yeah, we'll talk more about, there's so much topics to talk about. It's ridiculous. 210 degrees. So I've been saying, here's where we get into stop talking. We start talking about Deckard. Valve Deckard, the headset that has multiple proof of concepts that is tied to some internal version of Steam VR, possibly in the hands of some very select developers. Who knows? I personally think that some developers do have a Deckard prototype with them. But I originally predicted that I really believed that the displays we'll see in the Deckard were 4K Imagine displays. I found even more connections. Well, okay, we'll talk more about the new connections I found that kind of support my theory even more in a minute. Right now, we're going to talk about... Hold on, let me find it. So Imagine has finally shown off their full color prototype of their 4K displays. Right here. Oh, no, not here. Yeah, right here. Finally got full. I've been waiting for them to show off the full color prototype for a while. They've been saying for a while that they would show it off this year, and they finally did. And they also revealed, Imagine, this is a very big thing, by the way. They revealed that they also hit their target roadmap brightness of 10,000 nits micro OLED. That is a high brightness value you can only get right now in full color with their display technology and design. You might wonder, okay, well, why do you need 10,000 nits? The main reason is a lot of these advanced lens designs, including pancake lenses, they heavily cut the light that reaches your eyes. Their example is a lot of these lenses that they test out with these displays, they only have a 10% to 20% efficiency. So by the time a 10,000 nit display light reaches your eyes through these lenses, it would only be about, what was it, like only 100 to 200 nits when it reaches your eyes. I believe that's what the number was. And you might also wonder, okay, well, why is that a big deal? Well, the higher the brightness your displays are, the lower the persistence they will be able to have. You might have heard lower persistence. That basically eliminates ghosting in displays. That was kind of a big issue with the first generation of VR headsets. And then that's one of the reasons that Valve stated that they went with the LCD, that they went with for the Index, because they were very low persistence displays. Battery life go down? Not actually. They're actually not going down. That's one of the huger benefits of micro OLED. And we're going to talk more about battery life too, because there's a whole topic. So 10,000 nits, the higher, and we'll talk about this again later, a lot of things. The CEO even mentioned how companies like big VR consumer companies, they actually want more than 10,000 nits for full color micro OLED. But not more than 15K, but like between 10 to 15K, they want something around that. But they're okay with settling with 10K nits. So 10K nits is very important for consumer VR, for all the reasons I just said. But again, yeah, they showed off the 2 prototypes. One was a full color 10,000 nits display, and originally when they announced it, they were only showing off the prototype in a 1920 by 1200 micro OLED. But in the actual presentation, the CEO said that this is scalable to their other resolutions. It just requires the manufacturing tools, which they're working on getting for their partners. So here's the actual 4K. There's actually a lot of 4K micro OLED specs, but here's the basics of what the prototype they've shown off. It is a 2.1 inch 4K, 3600 by 4000. This would be per eye, by the way. Again, this would be per eye. 3600 by 4000 display. That is about 2600 ppi, with about almost a 10 nanometer pixel pitch, full color, and this is what I believe. This is what I believe the Valve Deckard will have. There is way more specs to it. Here's some actual first-time images of the full color 4K display, or at least the prototypes. It's kind of hard to see because obviously when you take pictures of these displays, and they usually try to add, they try to use Photoshop to increase the color and saturation. 20K means 400 nits. And here, let's talk about this. So, we're going to talk also about Facebook, that I also believe is using Imagine technology for their micro OLED work. We're going to... So this display, or this VR headset you see on the bottom right, this was based on the 2K by 2K per eye panel that they had years ago, which is what the 4K panel is based on, the design of the 2K by 2K. And both companies that they said, there's actually 3 big companies that they're working with closely. One company, they license the technology. What licensing means is they can use the technology and produce them for their own headsets, but they cannot sell the displays themselves. So they can really do their own designs and everything out of house. They don't really have to do too much with Imagine because they pay a lot of money to do whatever they want with the technology that they licensed, because you're licensing basically the patent, pretty much. And when they were talking about the first company that vetted the technology and decided this was very useful, this brings me back to Facebook years ago was talking about their half dome prototypes, which the half dome prototypes were all related to varifocal headsets. And guess what all those varifocal headsets were using, or trying to use, all those prototypes? They were actually using early high brightness Imagine displays. So that was, in my opinion, a good hint to an idea of a company vetting the technology so that they can use it for their technology, their own displays. And we're gonna talk way more about why I believe there's way more reasons why I believe Facebook is working, Facebook is a licensee for the Imagine tech. We're gonna get way more into that in a little bit, but I wanna go back to the 4K design. Call them Facebook? Am I saying Oculus? What am I calling them? I don't remember. I'm just saying whatever comes out my mouth first. So, it's 10% of 10K, whatever 10%. My brain is fried, by the way, so I can't do math on my brain right away. So, the 4K design for VR. Again, they talk about the high brightness values that they provide with the direct patterning, because they're like the only company that has direct patterning, which is literally red, green, blue subpixels, RGB stripe, that are emitting their own light. I talked about earlier, and we're going to talk more about it, how most micro OLED, including the micro OLED that is in the Arpara headset, that is actually white OLED with color filters to change the color of the white light coming through it. But color filters decrease the brightness dramatically. and they're also they're quite inefficient as well in terms of other ways. Like mostly we'll get into that a little bit. I know I'm saying those words a lot, but there's so much stuff. Yeah, they talked about how they're still working with the 4K company, because again, the 4K design was a partnership between Imagine and another company. This company, this was what the CEO said, by the way. The company took this 2K VR headset years back. They brought it around the company for 2 weeks. They borrowed it for 2 weeks, showed everyone around the company, and even the CEO got to try it. And the CEO of the company was like, I love this. We got to have this. We got to get rid of screen door effect. I love this. And that's what kicked off the 4K the 4K partnership design, which seems to be getting pretty close to finish. And they're again seemingly looking for the mass production lines for it. And then there's another company that they're working with. I don't really know who it might be, but they told me that they actually got their own unique backplane design, which micro OLED is built on silicon backplanes, which is very beneficial for this company, because there's some companies that kind of sell their OLED with their own backplanes, and that's just like a bundle deal. Imagine allows companies to design their own backplanes if they want to do different things, because the backplanes can actually be reprogrammed and redesigned to focus on different things. And apparently the backplane for this third company has just left their factory, and they are in the proof of concept for this third company. I don't know who it is. I just think of nits. Just stay with nits. Candela per meter square. That's what most displays are measured their brightness by, is candela. Is it candela per? Maybe it's not meter. Candela per something squared. Just nits. Oh, that's another thing that someone brought up in the chat. The 10K nits is not even the highest. So when you have the entire panel lit, there is a max brightness, and that is what they're calculating as the 10K nits. But some companies will also like sure to be a little sketchy with their peak brightness, which they will only have like a certain part of the display lit. And if they were to take that number, it was like 11,200 nits for a certain area of the display, if not all of it's lit. But again, you want the whole display lit, and you want to get the actual brightness number from when the entire display is lit, because that's real world use, you know. So and brightness will just keep improving with these technologies as well. So here's more specs that we can get off of the 4K. We're gonna start talking about Deckard again here. So you'll notice here, because the 4K, I want you to remind everyone, the 4K resolution is based highly off of the 2K micro display. And you see these words here? Variable refresh rates. If you know, have you ever heard of G-Sync or FreeSync? G-Sync's by NVIDIA and FreeSync's by AMD. Variable refresh rate is a technology that's gotten pretty popular. I think most gaming monitors especially include it. It's a way to stop screen tearing if a frame does not reach a certain hertz for that frame. The monitor has to compensate before variable refresh rate, but now with variable refresh rates, the monitors can actually communicate with the computer and lower the refresh rate for that frame, so there's no screen tearing. And these displays have that feature, basically FreeSync, but with a VR display, a micro display. And here's where we start talking about, I think it's this one. Yeah. So here's another link. I don't think there's any other micro display that advertises variable refresh rates on the market. I've not found one. There could be, I don't know. But this is a patent that was filed in November of last year by Jeremy Allen Salon. Might have said your name wrong, I'm sorry, from Valve. He does a lot of the stuff related to the displays that are going to be used in the next headset. And this whole patent is talking about having the ability of variable refresh rate and controlling brightness. So that's a huge link for sure. Like it's like, again, I can literally look up variable. I mean, look, it literally says when implemented on a low persistence display that supports a variable refresh rate, this dynamic light output can blah 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 blah. Like, there's nothing on the market that I can think of that is a low persistence display that also supports a variable refresh rate. It's pretty obvious, you know, like when you see stuff like that. And this is another thing that looks pretty related to micro OLED. It's basically like they try to be so vague in these patents, but like when you like think about these patents with Imagine and like these specs, they just line up perfectly. So yeah, again, variable refresh rate. So here's an issue with 4K by 4K, or here's an issue with 4K per eye displays. And this is an issue that even Pimax kind of has with their high resolution displays. Pimax seems to use 2 DisplayPort cables. 2. To be able to run them at native wired. The main reason behind that is because a lot of cables and just really GPU bandwidth for data is not high enough to support displays with such high resolution. But this 4K display has something really cool going on. We all talk about Phobia Rendering, eye-tracked Phobia Rendering. Well, this 4K micro display literally built into the actual backplane with software has a standardized way of having a lower data need on the outside of a window, and they can render like the full resolution inside of the center window of the display, and that can move around based on eye tracking. So it's basically it's kind of like hardware based Phobia Rendering. It's something that's software, but it's literally built into the actual backplane of the display. Super cool. Does that affect the GPU rendering? So so what I think the main reason they're doing this for is, again, to try to lower the requirements for bandwidth through a cable, especially. Obviously, that could probably be done. You know, actually, not even just a cable. The more I think about it, this might be how they can also. This might be how they can also. Let's just say for a second that they released Deckard with an XR2 Snapdragon chip. The XR2 has a 3000 by 3000 native resolution per eye limit at 90 hertz. But if you do stuff like this, you can probably also tweak that limit, because you won't be actually rendering 3000. You won't be actually rendering 4000, first of all, but you also wouldn't even be rendering 3000 natively. So this is like a really interesting and clever way to get past some of these barriers that even current Snapdragon XR2 has, and current data throughput with cables have. Lower the bandwidth on wireless. There's other technologies related for wireless. We've been seeing a lot of patents from multiple companies with this idea concept called Phobia Transport. Toby did a whole thing about it. Basically, based on where you're looking, is like they can communicate with the computer or whatever edge computing unit you're using, and transmit the data. They can decide which parts of the image need to be the most compressed when they send the data over the stream for that frame, which is different than Phobia Rendering, by the way. But it's a way to also lower the bandwidth needed with eye tracking, which is a cool technology. And I saw today Upload VR report on a patent that I talked about on my Twitter a month ago. And they were talking how it's about Phobia Rendering. But really, that patent was actually an update of their Phobia Rendering patent they've had since 2019, I believe. And they updated it to add the concept of Phobia Transport. So, And we'll talk about the possibilities of wireless for PSVR 2 as well in a little bit. I don't believe a 2022 HMD will use a chip from 2019. I personally don't either. But if they needed to, for whatever reason, I'm still waiting. Again, later this month, on November 30th, Qualcomm is going to have the Snapdragon Tech Summit. And if there was going to be a new XR chip announced, it would be during that summit. Yeah. Global and rolling shutter illumination. So the benefits of these displays is they can literally light up every pixel on the display at once, whereas most displays have a rolling shutter, which is like you always hear gray to gray, because it's always like a wave of pixels that are lighting up. But these micro OLED can all light up at once, which again, I think that's more. I think that's a benefit again to persistence, lowering the persistence, and also. I imagine latency is benefited as well by this. I almost missed this. Yeah, the 4K resolution display is also 10-bit color depth, and when you combine the high brightness with the color depth, that also means that it would be an HDR display. These are HDR capable displays. HDR VR. Even Sony has been said that their OLED technology that they're using for PSVR 2 is also HDR capable. So we're going to start seeing HDR capable headsets very soon. That's very exciting. Can you imagine? So really, the more I read about these displays, because again, literally a week ago, we just knew there was a 4K display. We knew not much about it. But literally this week, we learned everything. We learned freaking global aging compensation. Frick, I actually forgot about this. I found another patent, by the way, from Valve that relates to this. Global aging compensation. Dang it, I wish I had it ready for this stream. There's a patent from Valve that talks about global aging compensation for a display. Because, you know, OLED, people always worry that OLED will have a low lifetime. But they already solved that problem. Even Valve patented it for their use in Deckard. It's like, come on, man. It's so obvious. It's so obvious. Just announce it, please. Please. Yeah. Is this VR Gen 2? I mean, I'm very bullish on Valve hardware, VR hardware. I'm just waiting for the day they announce it, so I can throw my money at them, because, yeah. Oh, there was something, we'll talk about that when we talk about Sony. There's more Valve-related stuff I want to talk about later on, because I might have figured out what Vader might have, I might have figured out what lens system Vader, have you ever heard of the Vader headset? I think I might have figured out what they were using for that, and it's actually really bizarre and funny, and makes a lot of sense why they named it Vader. But we'll get to that in a little bit. This is another, this is just a bunch of companies that are literally, this is just a bunch of Chinese companies, only China. There's obviously companies around the world that are building manufacturing. There's a Korean company called Aps Holdings, that actually showcased right after Imagine. And someone asked Aps Holdings if they were partnering with Imagine in any way. And it sounds like, because also Aps Holdings does do a sort of direct patterning, or like a 3 sub-pixel for their OLED microdisplays. But they're kind of behind Imagine. They don't have any ability to produce up to 3000 ppi, which is kind of near the 4K display, until late next year. And when asked about their partnership, they kind of laughed and said, we had some synergies in the past, but due to COVID, we haven't been able to work together in the last recent couple years. So there's always a chance that Imagine and APS are working together. But really, that whole keynote presentation with Imagine and the APS Holdings, it seemed like they did sort of weren't completely sure what each other was fully working on. I mean, they probably do have a good idea, but they were not talking for each other as if they were like super close in recent years. So yes, I don't know. I don't have a picture of prototype Vader, but again, I found a patent I think might have been for Vader. and it's gonna blow your mind because it's gonna make a lot of sense why Valve had to abandon Vader for funny reasons. I mean, it was financial reasons too, but like, yeah. So a lot of companies. Now let's talk about the multiple ways that that micro OLED is developed. There's multiple different types of manufacturing methods. This slide here is very cool. To prove further that micro OLED fabs are being built very fast and as literally as fast as humanly possible, micro OLED is still considered a high-tech industry by both central and local governments. That means if literally any manufacturing company says, "Hey, we want to build a fab unit to build micro OLED," literally local and federal government of China will just throw money at them in a figurative sense. Like, they'll give them a lot of help. See all this stuff? They'll literally give them funding, infrastructure support, and tax reduction. A ton of benefits if they work on micro OLED. That should give you a good sign of how important micro OLED is if China is literally giving money to companies to just like get the factories going. And yeah, it's working because again, for 5 years, companies have been working super hard to get micro OLED fabs going. Yes. There's also a huge focus on VR technology in general. The AR VR industry is also listed in China's 14th 5-year plan. So it's huge for VR. AR is huge for China in manufacturing. So they will focus heavily on it, as expected. All right, so here's the main two methods. The main two methods, at least in China, the big ones that are used to produce micro OLED. I was saying earlier that the Arpara VR headset, again, it uses SIA 1-inch displays. And I said that even though those are micro OLED and they look really great, I know a lot of you probably saw the through the lens images, that is actually considered the low quality version of micro OLED. It is literally just white OLED pixels with color filters on top to actually get the full RGB. Whereas shadow masking is the more difficult, but I'll just read this. Shadow mask approach ideally has more to offer in image quality and energy savings. However, it's more complicated. So again, this is what allows the RGB stripe direct patterning does not require color filters. Color filters remove a ton of the light that the pixels can give off. This is why Imagine is ahead with brightness for full color. And all the companies that are based with white OLED with color filters, like including the Arpara display, they are very low brightness in comparison. But the white OLED with color filters are way easier to manufacture because they're built very similar to how a lot of current OLED TVs and stuff are made. So it's very easy for a lot of these companies like BOE, for example, to scale down those displays for micro displays built on silicon still. And there's also two different ways of shadow masking. There's silicon mask, which is the Imagine. Imagine uses silicon masking. And then there's also PR mask, which is, I believe this is based on glass substrate, which is not what I'm going to be talking much today. Yeah. Here's some examples of some companies that, to give you an idea of the different companies that work. I don't know. This is a very I'm sorry you can't read this very well. You can see a lot of companies again because they already have a huge, control of the OLED industry. That a lot of them use OLED with color filter. But there is one company called Xingyu, who was actually derived off of a company called Visionox. Visionox is actually kind of a struggling company, especially this year. They've lost a lot of investors because they're not doing well. But before this all happened, they split off their micro OLED company, which is called this Xingyu. I'm probably saying it wrong, Xingyu. And yeah, they're predicted to be doing the shadow mask on silicon method for manufacturing. Not much info on this company. Yes. Right? Here's some good... I wish these were higher resolution. I'm sorry you can't read these. I'll read these text numbers to you if I can. So here's just more the micro OLED plants in China. God, these are really bad images. I really took bad screenshots. And you can see the market share of the micro OLED by 2025. Sia, this green, is again the display company that is in the RPARA. And they kind of came out of nowhere and started producing a lot of displays, like a crazy amount. But they're not the displays that Imagine produce. So, yeah. Here's a sort of a glimpse over the years of the percentage of different methods that are going to be used to produce micro OLED. In 2021, only 3% of the market, or the manufacturing market, uses the silicon mask, which is, again, if you're interested in Deckard and Imagine, that means only 3% of fabs in China are able to make that kind of display. But in 2022, looks like it goes down. It's possible that they might make it with another way, though. And this is wrong, but this graph seems to show that a lot of companies are just going to invest in the OLED with color filters. But you can see the total OLED, like, it actually doubles for OLED. OLED material doubles from 3.6 to 6.5 from this year to next year, because a lot more companies are making OLED micro displays, for example. Why is factory also plant? Same thing. Well, I guess plant is like, same thing. BOE, I just want to talk a little about BOE. BOE makes a lot of the LCD displays in the Quest 2. I know that because it's literally listed as a BOE display in the kernel. And they had some interesting partnerships in the last few years. If a company, so BOE is actually a huge company. They're like one of the leading manufacturers of displays in general, especially LCD displays. But they also have a big OLED, and they've been partnering with. They started to partner with a company called Copen, and they also partnered with a company called what were they called? Olitech. Olitech was a few years ago. They were very proud of their displays. They said that they were the direct competitor to Imagine years back. They still use the white color filter. They still use the white with color filters way, and they have fallen behind, and they're like really quiet. They are working on stuff in the background with BOE. Copen actually this year BOE actually announced that they achieved some huge mass production lines for micro OLED. This says LED, but it's actually micro OLED. That is a mistake. Yeah, they finished mass production lines for micro OLED. Again, this is definitely the color filter way, but this is still a good sign for the micro OLED industry. And when and earlier this year they announced they were not going to work with Copen anymore. I'm curious what happened between the partnership of Copen and BOE, because I feel like Copen would definitely want to be partnered with BOE because they're such a big force. But yeah, but to talk about Olitech just for a little bit, they're another OLED company, and they're still trying their best to basically salvage what they can with the white color system to get higher brightness and better colors. And I found a patent. You can't read it, but it's in Chinese. It looks like this Olitech is looking at ways to actually use quantum dots to improve color gamut for micro OLED, which is bizarre. And they also said that the blue light, the blue pixel light, will be able to shine through, which is only because, red, green, blue, but only one of the colors will be able to shine through. And that's how they're trying to get better brightness and colors. But that is still a bit of a far cry from direct patterning, which does not require any filters at all. So, yeah. Very interesting stuff. All right, that's pretty much, before we go on to the next topic, that is pretty much everything I have to say about DSCC related to micro OLED. I really just wanted to talk about it because I thought it was incredibly interesting to learn about how these displays are manufactured and that there is different versions of micro OLED. I know it's hard to like imagine imagine that that's a thing, but like yeah, there are different ways to produce micro OLED, and those different ways and different designs heavily affect really not just the near future of displays, but like the long-term future. Because imagine I think they said they think they can get to 22,000 full color by 2023 or something like that, which that's a huge number. And a lot of these color filters are not even close to, like, they're not even reaching 10K full color yet. So it's like, yeah, I don't really know why the I know why the manufacturing companies are focusing on white OLED with color filter manufacturing, but really I think in the long term you're kind of hitting a bit of a dead end with that. So in my opinion, we're moving to VR Gen 2. I mean, honestly, okay, I'm so glad you brought that up. Let's go back to let's talk about Vader for a minute. I found a really cool patent almost by accident. Actually, what? No, 3 more minutes and we'll get into Vader, because the Vader concept actually relates to the Sony PSVR stuff. So a little bit longer. Sorry, I don't mean to tease you, but a little bit longer. Do you think Sulong Q's spatial tracking system was used in developing the... I'm not sure. I don't know much about... We're going to talk about Sulong Q a little bit, by the way, Z-Storm. Don't worry. We're going to talk about that a little bit, because it really shows... Oh, maybe we should dive into... We need to dive into Facebook using Imagine. That's the next topic we need to talk about for sure. Okay. Okay. The stream, this VOD will be uploaded afterwards. Yes, let me make sure, by the way, that okay, cool. Yeah, the VOD will be up later. So let's talk about Facebook, because it's also my huge belief. I'm going to move this display over here. Actually, hold on a sec. Ah, frick. Move it over here. I've been talking about this file I found in the kernel a long time ago, or for a long time, I should say. Give me a second. I'm just setting up here because I didn't have much. All right, anyway. Oh, where did I put those patents, though? I have them somewhere. Oh, okay, here we go. Oh, this is what I want, actually. Okay, well, it's fine. So, yeah, this right here, I've talked about it a lot. This is literally a reference to OLED microdisplays in some form of It is definitely a form of Project Cambria. It is called the Seabright prototype. They were implementing on something called Seacliff for a while. But all of a sudden, there was this Seabright prototype that came out of nowhere in like the second half of this year. My original prediction was they were going to make a Quest 2 Plus and Quest 2 Pro, because I saw these very different prototypes. My concept was, I thought that maybe they were going to use very similar R&D for this headset, because they both use pancake display. They obviously both use pancake lenses, and I've learned that you can use pancake lenses with LCD. Totally fine. But it's now my belief that they might have pivoted. Okay, this is what I believe now. This is what I believe now. And this could be wrong. This is all my speculation. But I think originally, Project Cambria was very close to being finished and being set up for mass production. Like, I feel like the original plan was to announce Cambria at Connect for release in early next year. I think that was originally the plan. I think they were originally going to use mini LED displays, which are basically LCD with mini LED backlights. I think that's what people were saying. It was dual cell LCD. I don't think it really was dual cell. I think it might have just been mini LED. Because we're seeing a lot of headsets kind of incorporate that. But I think what has been happening at Facebook, because I'm not the only one that's doing a lot of this corporate espionage stuff. Facebook is watching every single competitor. A company that's as big as Facebook, to where they rename themselves to be based... They want their name to be related to the buzz term metaverse, right? It's very important to them to be ahead and literally have the name and VR and AR industry to themselves. So they're doing a lot. I'm sure they're seeing what other companies are working on, and they see that Apple is wanting to use micro OLED. Valve is most likely wanting to use micro OLED, and both those headsets are probably coming out next year, or at least being mass produced next year. If they released a high-end headset that only has LCD, I don't think that looks very good for them, especially since those LCDs were planned to be the same resolution per eye as the current Quest 2. And there's a little more proof behind. There's a little more proof behind that the OLED displays that they're using. They made a lot of partnerships to actually get ready to manufacture micro OLED for their own uses. I talked about earlier in the stream that Imagine said that they were actually they licensed their technology to a company to do whatever they want. Yeah, I do believe Facebook is definitely that company. We have 2 patents that came out around really the same week that Oculus Connect happened. I'm not going to talk too much about them. They both cover the concept of using either an OLED microdisplay with color filters and white pixels, or the concept of using a micro OLED display with a direct patterning, because patents are trying to be vague. So in case they decide to go one way or the other, they can do both. But they do reference direct patterning in this. As well as the fact that the prototype is called C-Bright, which assumes that the displays in the headset are very bright. And they're also running at a very high resolution. Again, they're like, what was it? I already forgot. 2784 by 3000 per eye. There's not any technology I know of at the moment that has that high resolution for micro OLED. This is very close to the 4K, and it's much greater than 2K. And again, there's a history of Facebook using Imagine prototypes for their half-dome headsets. But anyway, so both these patents have so every patent always references inventors, and one inventor from one of these patents works at Intel and Facebook, and Intel has actually been what he seems to do at Intel is related to display technology, and Intel is one of the leading. I mean, obviously they're very experienced with silicon and semiconducting and building stuff for that. And then another patent, which I think it was one or the other. There was another name here that had an employee working at Applied Materials, which is this company here. Applied Materials, what they do is they supply a ton of fabricating machinery for production lines. And they're both Intel and AMD order their machines heavily from this company to do things. Just to give you an idea, let's go to display here real quick on their official website, and we go into display technology and see what they're working on. And they literally talk about micro OLED right here. So and also the DSCC, if you're also curious, let's look at DSCC's biggest funder. So the main, again, I was using the AR/VR forum by DSCC to talk about all the stuff with microdisplays. Applied Materials, they are the big money for this event, which makes a lot of sense because they have their hand in a lot of the actual manufacturing machinery that would be used for producing micro OLED and micro LED too. So. Micro LED is incredibly expensive. Yeah, I don't really want to talk about micro LED. I only want to talk about micro OLED. People talk about micro LED is going to be used in VR headsets very soon, but I really don't see any hints of that. Again, but that's a whole other topic. We don't need to confuse people right now. So yeah, Applied Materials. And Applied Materials is most likely. Okay, here's what I believe. The ending line of everything I basically said. My belief is that Facebook is licensing Imagine technology and is partnering with both Intel to supply the silicon and semiconductors And Intel and Facebook are using Applied Materials to actually build the machinery for mass producing displays, micro OLED displays, for their future VR headsets. That is my going opinion, based on everything I said. There was probably more hints that I totally forgot, but my mind is all over the place. OLED burn-in low brightness, anyone? OLED... You're thinking of standard OLED, though. You can't compare OLED to OLED on silicon, honestly. It's very different. Very different. They're not high persistence. At least Imagines. Copen has a 3K, but no more fab. It's also possible they're using Copen, but again, because of the fact that both these patents related to it have ties with Intel and they'll apply materials, and Copen was not present also in this event. Imagine was invited to this event. I really think that Applied Materials and Imagine are also very... I also, by the way, this is a funny thing. So AMD has had their hands in Imagine as well for a while, including, I believe, some employees from AMD ended up moving to work at Imagine. And AMD also used the 2K by 2K prototype in the years back. So AMD is also very bullish on Imagine. And it's my belief because AMD and Valve are very close right now. You don't even need to look at this. Like, you can obviously look at the Steam Deck as like the obvious example of that. But there's a lot of stuff happening in the background that seems to show that Valve and AMD are working very closely together. Obviously, not just the fact that like Linux works best on AMD and like Valve is heavily involved in Linux, and they got AMD to fab their own AMD APU for Steam Deck and probably others for future products. But I also think that AMD might be supplying the silicon, or is planning to supply the silicon that the backplanes will be built on for Valve's micro OLED displays. Which, if that's true, if my predictions are true, and Facebook is using Intel and Valve is using AMD, it's really funny to imagine AMD and Intel are fighting each other again. But even just for OLED micro displays, I think that's a concept. Intel go, and someone pointed out to me the Facebook logo, and I think is the Meta logo still blue, and Intel logo is blue, and the Valve logo is red, and AMD logo is red. It's like, it's good stuff. Good stuff. And that's another true thing people are saying. Really, even with OLED back in 2016, the OLED displays in 2016, in the Vive and Oculus Rift, they didn't really have that much... They didn't have issues with burn-in in a lot of those headsets. I haven't heard anyone complain about that. And it's a lot of reasons because I think a lot of people, when they put OLED in their headset... Excuse me. When they put any OLED in their headsets, they're also using technologies to make sure that the lifetime is much longer, because there's ways to get around the issues that technologies have. Because every display has their benefits and issues, right? But you can solve a lot of the issues with software in a lot of ways. All right, let's talk about Sony. Why would AMD... Well, it's very... So I don't know if anyone at Valve actually can design silicon. For the 4K display, I didn't mention this earlier, but the CEO of Imagine said that the 4K display actually went through a lot of testing in different backplane designs, which AMD would be perfect to do that, right? I don't really think Valve has the know-how or the experience to do that. But if they're working very closely with AMD, it makes a lot of sense for AMD to supply the design for the backplane, at least, if they're not supplying the actual silicon. And AMD, I say AMD supplies the backplane, but really AMD has the actual factories, they have the partnerships under AMD that could truly supply the silicon for the backplane design that they made, if that makes sense. I really hope the next gen if the 4K display makes it into the Deckard, it should literally have no screen door effect. Literally, that was like the main point of it when it was being spread around. All right. Of course the PPD has a huge. Of course, that also depends heavily on PPD though, pixels per degree, and the FOV it'll reach, of course. But again, 4K by 4K. Okay, it's not 4K by 3600 per eye or whatever, 3600 by 4K per eye. That is, I don't see anyone complaining about that, especially since the pixel gap was like, was it? How was it? I think it was like 1 nanometer for the pixel gap on that display. I could be misremembering. They had the specs for that, but I didn't save it. I'm an idiot. Quest 2 doesn't have a screen door effect. No, not really. I mean, I haven't used my Quest 2 in a while, so I can't remember. It's much so the problem is if you've been in VR for a while, and you started with the Vive and Oculus Rift, every headset that comes out with a higher resolution, it really feels like it has no screen door effect compared to the first gen consumer VR headsets, right? But there's still a lot of improvements that can be done. Even the Vive Pro 2, I noticed that it really felt like the pixel gaps between the pixels and the Vive Pro 2, which is advertised as a 5K headset, wasn't that different than the from the Index, which that is very confusing. The pixels are much smaller, obviously, in the Vive Pro 2 panels, but it really felt like when I looked really closely, and when I'm in hardware review mode, I am looking as close as I can to make good comparisons. It's really more about pixel gap and PPI and stuff. So, yeah. Yes. All right. Let's talk about PSVR 2 a little bit. Ming-Chi Kuo talked about how Apple's mixed reality headset will support Wi-Fi 6E, which is I don't think that's a surprise to anyone. I don't really care about that. But what he goes on to say later on is incredibly interesting. He talked about that next headsets from Meta, Apple, and Sony will adopt Wi-Fi 6 or 6E in 2022. Now, this is someone who has previously reported on the lenses manufacturer for Sony's PSVR 2. They said the lens manufacturer for Sony is also the same lens manufacturer for Meta or Facebook or Oculus for Cambria. They're most likely, which is confusing because Cambria is going to be using pancake lenses, polarization-based pancake lenses. But apparently, according to rumors, Sony is using Fresnel lenses, which made me worry that maybe we won't see micro OLED in Sony's headset. But we're gonna talk about that in literally a minute. Actually, let's talk about that now. Let's talk about Vader. Keep PSVR 2 in the back of your mind. Just put it under a blanket. We'll pull the blanket off in literally a minute. I originally thought that micro OLED displays were impossible to be magnified with Fresnel lenses. Well, apparently, they are not impossible. It's not impossible because this is a patent from Valve filed in 2017, which is around the time they started working on Index, and probably the time they were also looking into Vader, the Vader headset. This is Joshua Mark Hudman. This is also the guy that has been working on all the new lens systems for Deckard, by the way. So he knows he's very, very talented. He worked on HoloLens as well, the lens system for HoloLens at Microsoft before this. But this is crazy. I can't believe it. So this patent literally talks about OLED micro displays and using 2 Fresnel lenses stacked to be able to magnify the image, which is crazy. I can't believe it. And when I imagine 2 giant Fresnel lenses stacked on top of each other, you know the first thing that came into my mind? This is what I thought of. I bet you those lenses look very similar to the eye lenses that the Vader helmet, like the Darth Vader helmet had. And I bet you that's why they named it Vader, because they were testing out micro displays with double Fresnel lenses, but it ended up being too expensive even back then. And probably some other issues, because this was 2017. They had the 2K by 2K display, I think, in 2017. Imagine did. But this was way back when there was no manufacturing for micro OLED. Like none. And I think that's really what the big costs that they were always talking about with Vader really came from. Again, Valve has been wanting to use micro OLED in their products for a while. They literally have previous patents from 2016 that talk about the 2K by 2K and 4K by 4K micro OLED designs. So it's not surprising that Valve would finally use micro OLED when the manufacturing is for mass-produced scale. Sony rumors say LCD. I heard the opposite. Sony rumors say OLED. And they even have a resolution. It was like 2200 by something per eye. I made a video about it, but I can't remember the exact resolution. And I didn't talk about... Wait, was it here? Oh, did I not save it? I didn't save it. So they talked... They actually mentioned that they believed that Sony would use OLED as well. The DSCC people. I really don't think it's going to be LCD at all. Sony is very talented with OLED, and I figured that they might look into OLED microdisplays, but it's probable that they're just going to use a very good type of OLED panel, no matter what they put in the headset. But I'm not really bullish on them using micro OLED because of the Fresnel thing. And again, even though Valve figured out a way to magnify the micro OLED with two Fresnel lenses, I don't think that's what's going to be happening. And there was a special patent that was filed by Sony saying they were able to create a special kind of Fresnel lenses that apparently eliminates God rays. I don't know what extent that works, but that was a patent from Sony, and it was probably related to PSVR 2. So yeah, we go talk about this. Let's go back to PSVR 2. I know we were off topic again for a second. Yeah, so again, Sony will adopt Wi-Fi 6 and 6E in 2022. Before, we've been hearing a lot of talk about how Sony was planning to have a tethered headset for PSVR 2. However, I really feel like if they... no matter what the rumors say about that, that might have been the original plan, honestly. It might have been the original plan for them to only do wired. But the more I think about imagining them releasing a PSVR 2 in 2022 with a wire seems really tone deaf to the industry. And I really do not believe that Sony of all companies would be that tone deaf. I really feel that they might really try to include some sort of basic SoC in their headset, even just to have the benefit of doing all their tracking, because they're expected to use inside-out tracking, markerless inside-out tracking with cameras. And their recent patent that was talked about today on some VR news journalism websites, they talked about how they said that they patented a Phobia rendering. They did not newly patent Phobia rendering with eye tracking. They updated their eye-based tracked Phobia rendering, but they also added something very similar to Toby's Phobia Transport, which again, I will remind you, Phobia Transport was basically using your eye tracking data to communicate with a PC or a console to allow a very fine-tuned compression of certain areas of the frame to be transported mostly wirelessly. So the bandwidth does not have to be that great. And when I see a patent updated to have something very similar to that, I really, really would be surprised that it would still have only wired as an option. I really think they're going to try to push the wireless in this headset. Because it's very similar to the concept of VR stations, like the Pimax VR station, the Deca Gear, what do they call it, the Deca Brick or something? Where people are putting SoCs in their headset, Deckard included, at least for wireless VR. Yeah, Slam. So, yeah, and we might know more soon because the rumors say that this December we might actually get a full reveal or at least a hint of what the PSVR 2 HMD hardware looks like. This comes from someone on Reddit. By the way, this user on Reddit, I looked at their post history. They are actually a very toxic flame boy that I really just describe Reddit very well. But he did make some accurate predictions about a recent PlayStation showcase that happened on the exact date he said. And he literally said that in December we will get the announcement of a studio being acquired from PlayStation officially, and an actual reveal of their hardware. So only one more month and we might hear about it. I also have very high expectations of PSVR 2. And I really think it's going to be good for really just the health of the hardware market and VR market in general. I am very happy to see Sony work hard on their next headset. This was some more research I was doing because I talked about how they were planning to use they are definitely using OLED of some type. That has been said multiple times from a bunch of analysts and a bunch of rumors that they're going to use OLED of some type in their PSVR 2. So I was trying to, and it said that Samsung is the one that's going to manufacture and build those panels, which is also not a surprise because Samsung is who manufactured the PSVR 1 panels as well. So I was trying to see if Samsung has any experience or really anything related to OLED microdisplays. This was literally the only thing I could find, and it's really just a research paper of a metaservice-driven OLED microdisplay that can reach 10,000 ppi. I've not found any public data that talks about Samsung being ready to build micro OLED at a mass production scale, which again does not say very good for micro OLED for Sony at least. Which is so again, this is really bizarre because Sony has been doing micro OLED for a while. I've been saying that before. They use micro OLED in their cameras. The viewfinders are like the highest resolution micro OLED in any viewfinder on the market, and they are very experienced with micro OLED because they've just been doing it so years because of all their other R&D ventures. And they also create a very cool technology with micro OLED where they can emit IR light from IR pixels built on micro OLED, and when the light bounces off your eyes, they can go back through and hit the CMOS silicon sensor, that backplane that it's the pixels are built on, and be able to do eye tracking all in one with just the display, which is a really cool technology. Super cool. I always nerd out when I hear about that. So this was a patent talked about recently. So I want to talk about this patent just a tiny bit. I don't want to talk too much about it. People are saying this is only the patent for the AR headset that they showed off for Ghostbusters. Hold on, let me look up Sony Busters VR AR. Yeah, it was this. So people are very confused about what this thing is. So yeah, let's move this closer to my tab here. Not that one. So this is a patent for a head strap design, head mounted display. This is what literally every company calls their patents for full head mounted displays. Originally, I thought they were only patenting the elastic bands in it, but there's actually quite a bit more than that they're patenting. They're patenting a lot of different methods of making this headset, and people were kind of discounting it because they were like, hey, this was just this headset, the AR headset. So let me give you some background on this. And I think it was late 2018. So in late 2018, Sony for a few months in their production studios offered an AR experience with these prototype headsets. It was only a venture for 3 months, and it was only in Japan. It never went anywhere. So people thought, and they even say this is literally a research story, by the way. This was kind of a way to gauge interest in the concept of this head strap design, and also probably to get some very valuable feedback from the users that tested this out. And I really believe a lot of the ergonomic choices that were made for this research time that they did the Ghostbusters experience, I think a lot of the choices they made for this made them feel like they were on the right track for the head strap design and head mounted display design for the actual PSVR 2. I know it seems very confusing, but so there is a point where AR and VR is very close to each other right now, because really this was how do I explain it? You'll see a lot of designs in the next couple of years that are focused on AR, but are really just VR headsets. And it makes no sense for a company like Sony to make a design as streamlined as this and test it for a few months only in Japan, and then later go on patent a lot of the concepts of that design in the USA months after they did this experiment. Months after they did this experiment, because this is a continuation of a patent that they originally did file in 2018 in Japan, probably for this test. But I think when they realized that they were on the right track for this design, they were like, hey, let's start taking elements from that research prototype that people liked and start implementing. And there's multiple implementations here. Really, the big difference is there's multiple versions here that they can still go with. There's one version with 4 of these little points. There's one version with 3 points, and there's one version with just a hollow back at the back of the head strap. And they can go with any of those things. I don't want to talk too much more about it, but I just want people to understand, if you see something like this in the future, do not discount a patent if it was only used for a research test thing, because it's very easy for them to get feedback on stuff from actual consumers, right? If they actually just do, like, they advertise something as a short experience, and they can just at least build off of the experience from that. So pass through AR, exactly. Is PCVR VR chat on the PlayStation? I don't think there's any VR chat on the PlayStation. I imagine, I would be so surprised if they don't get VR chat. Or I would be surprised if they don't try. Or VR chat does not try to get their game on the PlayStation VR 2 platform. If you think VR chat is very popular in the West, in Japan, VR chat is basically a cultural icon. Like, it's literally when people think of VR in Japan, they literally think of VR chat. It's that big. So and Sony is a Japanese company. PlayStation is a heavily owned console brand from Japanese users. I just think makes a lot of sense that we might see VR chat on PSVR 2 in some way. We'll see. Alright, I think we're almost done. I am exhausted. Holy frick. Okay. There's also another way to make micro OLED very similar to how Imagine does their direct patterning. I talked about AP Holdings, and they have a metal micro machining way of doing things. And they should be ready end of next year, though, to mass produce up to 3000 ppi OLED micro displays with RGB pattern. I should have put this earlier in the stream, but I messed up. So, all right, let's go over a little. Okay, so let's talk about another technology. Oh my god, we still have more to go, guys. We still have more to go. Oh my god, there's so much going on in the background. It's killing me. Okay, let's talk about this. I'm gonna pull up Oled VR's thing. Let's talk about this. Upload VR posted it today. I talked about it last week because they actually presented this new technology last week at Connect. Application Space Warp can give Quest apps 70% more in performance. I'm not gonna go explain the exact way it works, but for a while, a lot of Oculus apps have allowed the use of something called a depth layer or depth buffer. I can't remember the exact name. And with this depth, I want to say depth layer. I want to say it right because I'm gonna say depth buffer. Okay, cool. It's called a depth buffer. So a lot of apps have it already, but if Quest apps start to implement it, they can activate a feature called Application Space Warp. This is something that has to be implemented by developers, but if they do it correctly in the right implementations, they can actually reach 70% more headroom performance with Quest apps. That is a huge percentage, and they even advertise that you won't have any issues with latency with this new Space Warp technology. Previous Space Warp technologies as well, from what I understand. So let's say there's a Gatorade bottle. A lot of reprojection technologies would sort of be able to translate the pixel of the object left and right and closer and farther, which was very easy. That's how reprojection works without really taking too much rendering. They can just move the pixel around. But with Application Space Warp, they can do that, and they can also rotate. They can also rotate the frame, or the things in the frame, the pixels, which is a big deal. That is huge. They advertise that if you made an app that only runs at 32 frames per second, you can use this technology to literally double the frame rate to 72 hertz, which means you can do a lot more stuff. You can do way more stuff. Death layer. And what's really funny about this technology, and this is gonna make some people kind of go crazy, this technology that they're discussing how this works is very similar to a technology that Valve has patented. Very similar. So this is obviously focused on onboard apps for the Quest, like actually built into the standalone compute unit, right? Valve, this patent here, this one of the split rendering patents, and they also have reprojection based patents related to this. They go on to talk about their reprojection technology with split rendering that literally does the same freaking thing, but not on the actual but it's focused on reprojecting frames from a computer, an edge computing thing. Not on board, but I imagine the APU or the SoC on board is what handles the reprojection later on. I'm not sure completely how it works. It's very complicated, but all of this here is very similar to how Application Space Warp works. And it's really bizarre how similar everyone's working on very similar things. So yeah. So this is very good. So what does that mean for PC apps? If Valve is doing something very similar to this, right? Valve is doing something very similar to this, but focus on PC VR apps. Well, that means stuff like very weak compute units, like maybe a Steam Deck APU. If developers were able to implement something like this in those apps and plug their Deckard into a Steam Deck or a compute unit with a AMD APU, maybe slightly stronger, you can get the same sort of gains, theoretically. Makes a lot of sense. We've been talking a lot about split rendering and the benefits that come with it, but these companies are doing very similar things, guys. It's not an accident. They're all doing very similar things because they all figure out stuff very similarly, you know. Neil talked about how it's much better than PC. So the main reason it's better than PC ASW all the all the PC space warp technologies that Oculus released, they were not done at the application level. They were done like on a what do you call it level? Like a global level. Not driver level, but like this is something that has to be implemented in applications. That's why it's called application space warp. And the technology that Valve patented is very similar too. It seems. So ASW 2.0 is not bad, but this is way better. And this is gonna be very beneficial. I hope this works out a lot, by the way, guys, because between having stuff like this and Valve working on very similar technology with split rendering based application space warp and Phobia Rendering with eye tracking and being able to also control the bandwidth of a center window and the Imagine display and like all these other things combined, and OpenXR, which makes it a lot easier for developers to sort of make the same app for multiple platforms, we might see not only Quest apps, but every app get way better, like at least visual looks. Because the issue right now has been, we see a lot of PC VR apps, and because they're trying to tailor to the Quest audience, their graphics or whatever looks really bad. Incredibly bad. But with stuff like this, they can theoretically improve the graphics and use this technology to compensate for the... And another thing that we're going to talk about Carmack notes a little bit, but Carmack also said that the Quest 2... He's actually so disappointed with the Quest 2's cooling. The Quest 2 has one little dinky fan inside of it, and because of that, the Quest 2 is underclocked. The XR2 inside the Quest 2 is underclocked dramatically. So that's not very, that's also, you're not even getting much headroom out of the full potential of the XR2 in the Quest 2, for example. So, I've had pretty rough experience with the ASW and virtual desks on my Quest 2, but sounds really promising. I think this is, they were very proud of this, and they should be. This is a very big technology. Like, this is... And I think they're releasing the documentation for developers in a few days, and I guarantee developers are going to jump on this like crazy, because it's very variable. They can turn it on and turn it off at whatever, and they can even there's some ways that this will not work, but I don't want to explain those ways because they're kind of confusing for some people. But for most scenarios, except for render, this doesn't work with very well with transparent objects up close. So if you're ever developing a Quest app and you have like semi-transparent hands or like semi-transparent controllers in the game, that will not work well. You can't do that. You have to go full opaque. I don't see that many games do semi-transparent controllers or things up close, but that was something they said that will be a struggle with this technology. You can't do that. That's the biggest thing. So very cool stuff. I love it. So Carmack last week, he went to talk about a lot of different topics, but he literally, this is all of his notes that he dumped. He dumped his notes on a Dropbox page, and I am going to read some of the interesting ones that I want to talk about, because he was not able to cover everything, just like how I'm not ever able to cover everything. So I'm actually going to use my, I saw them in the chat. Let's see if they're still here. Apple on my Discord, which is also the person that I love Apple. They're the person from China that gives me a lot of insights on what companies are working on or what they're doing, and he was the one that gave me the lead that that Pimax was making a standalone headset, and that was correct, right? And he actually did a pretty great summary of some of the cool things that I wanted to talk about, so I'm going to use his when I re-find it. Hold on a second. Give me a second to find it. Because I really have had not much time. It's actually crazy how little time I've had. It's kind of sad this week. I've just been studying so many different topics. Okay. Give me a moment. Okay. Transparent UI? I imagine... well, not really. No, not transparent UI, because normally... Okay, if you are a good VR developer, you make a UI that doesn't move with your head. Any developer that makes a UI that moves with your head, I hate you so much. And you need to stop that right now. But usually, it's fast-moving objects. Because again, I talked about how the reprojection technology works by translating pixels and rotating them. UIs, usually when you open a UI menu, it just stands still or is on your hand. If it's on your hand and moving with your hand, then yeah, you don't want any transparency for that because you're not going to be able to read text very well, most likely. But again, guys, if there's any developers in chat or you're looking to make VR apps, please don't attach HUDs to people's faces. I really hate it. Like, I literally, every game that does that, luckily people have started getting away from that, but every game that has done that, I pretty much turn off the game immediately. It's so obnoxious. I hate it. I re-got it. Thank you. Thank you, Apple. Thank you. All right, we're gonna talk only a few things about he mentioned. This is Carmack Notes. He uploaded. I can post a link for anyone that wants it. I'm just gonna do it anyway. Been following Imagine for years. Bring on OLED. I couldn't agree more. Thank you for the money. By the way, I will not be streaming next week because I'll be traveling to California and then Miami to work on some projects with Thrill. If you want to support me, Patreon, bradsmells.com/Patreon, and I will also have some new merch coming out later today, most likely. I am finally going to release the Qualcomm t-shirts. I'm so excited. Merch.bradsmells.com. Anyway, okay, I love it. I've been and I got one of my good friends. The person, by the way, just for fun, a little background story. If you do end up buying this design, the person that drew this quail was one of the the main art guy behind the original Vertigo VR game. So this is the most VR related shirt I could possibly make, even though it's a stupid meme. So if you like, yeah, the original Vertigo. So cool. No IP issues there. We'll find out when we get there. I mean, I don't think so. I've seen worse. Anyway, let's talk about this. Yes, let's talk. Anyway, so he mentioned before this talk he gave his Twitter followers a chance to ask some questions, and one of his questions was based on what he thinks, what kind of hardware evolutions we'll have for VR over the years. Two-part systems. Two-part systems sounds like split rendering to me. I don't really know what else two-part systems would be, but he even says here, two-part systems. That literally, He also goes on to talk about split rendering with the cloud and how he feels that that's way too far away. Yeah, he constantly keeps hearing people excitedly talk about split rendering with the cloud, and someone that's very down to earth of what's possible. He didn't mention edge computing in it, but I imagine the two-part system is edge-based split rendering. He talks about wider field of views, brain interfaces, obviously. A lot of work being done in the background for non-invasive and invasive brain-computer interfaces. Blah, 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 blah. Haptics. But this is the most interesting one. It seems like... So custom SoC development... This is not surprising to me that a company like Facebook would want to one day pursue their own SoCs. This is what Apple is doing with their headset. They're definitely using their own silicon designs for their headset. Google is now making their phones with their own Tegra. I think they're called Tensor. They're called Tensor chips, which is custom Google silicon. And we're seeing a ton of companies that are these giant tech companies want to pursue their own SoCs. So it doesn't surprise me that one day, even Meta devices will break away from Qualcomm and use their own SoCs. But this seems to be, since it's the last on the list, I imagine that's way out in the future still. You got a phone with Tensor? I'm curious, what do you think about it? Is it, well, okay. I'm very curious about the Tensor chip. I've heard a lot of mixed things. What do you think about it? Like, what do you have before that? If anything, it's promoting Qualcomm? I don't think so. I don't think custom SoC development would really mean Qualcomm, unless they have Qualcomm build their design, which is a possibility. I mean, I did talk about how, you know, with the Deckard, the Deckard, there was 12 cores, remember? There was 12 cores being reported, thermals, in the Deckard HMD to the Steam Deck CMOS 3. And I wasn't sure if that was a custom chip from Valve, or that might just be like a new XR chip that's in the works from Qualcomm. Maybe we'll know more at the end of this month. Again, Snapdragon Tech Summit, November 30th, and I will be sure to cover that event when that time comes. Thanks for all you do. No problem. This is hard work. This was especially a hard week. All right. Other stuff that he talks about is they want to develop better, basically better streaming, especially through a wire for let me find it. They want to continue improving wired link, Oculus Link, by using a very custom-based codecs, compute shader-based codecs, which is pretty crazy. It's very interesting that he still wants to. Why he mentions wired. He's very interested in wired still, which I wonder what his reasoning is for, because everything else that kind of really shows is it's all about wireless, right? So that someone like Carmack only saying wired means there is definitely still a lot of limits that you have with wireless, no matter what. Of course, the Quest 2 is using USB-C for wired and not really like a display port, so that might be the reason, but still, very interesting. Oculus will be at CES? I'm not sure. I don't think they announced the exact... Oh, by the way, guys, I am so excited. I said in my previous streams that I was planning on going to CES. That is completely confirmed, 110%. I got my hotel booked, I got my flight booked, and not only that, I got a press pass approved. Like, I actually got approval. That would not happen if it wasn't for the fact that all you people that are watching me right now and come back for my videos, you have allowed my analytics to be enough where I am eligible for a press pass. And that's a big deal. That means I can go on special press only days where it's less busy, and that means I should theoretically be able to try out more stuff and talk to more companies. So that is super exciting. Thanks everyone. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, again, Carmack kind of complained. He did complain about it in his giant talk, that internally the company is just talking so much about cloud computing for VR, split rendering with the cloud and not the edge case. But Carmack is like, that's still very unlikely for a mass consumer scale. And really, that's kind of a trap that a lot of the big players in the tech industry are constantly talking about cloud computing. But there's a lot of steps that need to be made before a cloud-based server would be able to accurately work together with a SoC on your headset, with very little latency and all that stuff. So, yeah. Second time I watched your stream, fairly new, but I love the patent reading information. Thank you for your work. Thank you for your donation. Very much appreciated. Where can I buy? The Qualcomm shirt will be on. Well, go to bradsmells.com. just keep that. I will try to have the shirt up later today. If it's not up later today, it'll be definitely up tomorrow. And there's a merchandise link on bradsmells.com for that shirt. Thrill is going to CES. Thrill is going. Yeah. So I work a lot with Thrill, but there's also a lot of stuff I want to do for my own channel, because again, you're not going to see, like, he does amazing content, right? He does super, he's got incredibly well-produced videos. I can never do that, but also because I am able to do this, I'm able to talk about a lot more topics and a lot more complex things than he is, because having a high production value and also being more, how do I put this? Being more consumer friendly or viewer friendly are two things that go together. Whereas me, I can continue to work with him on a lot of projects, but I still want to dive in deeper for a lot of things that, yeah, I just want to dive in deeper. Exactly what NetTux said. Yes, yes. Yeah, he's very, I mean, he's pretty informative too, but he's definitely an entertaining personality. I am not an entertaining personality. I like the information side of things. I think it's a lot more interesting. All right, let's keep continuing on. Oh yeah, Carmack talked a lot about how Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg's push for doing the metaverse, he doesn't think is going to work that well. Or at least as well as everyone else in the company, the higher ups say, which is pretty funny. He also says that a lot of the stuff that they kind of talk about, like codec avatars and like all the stuff they showed off in their CGI trailers during Connect, are illogical right now from a performance optimization standpoint. So that's really funny. I love that. He mentioned, okay, I love this. He mentions that VR headsets should replace people's screens instead of being an additional screen. People won't make mobile phones dusty, they will make their headsets dusty. And he talks more about how I always love hearing about this, because I know it bothers Carmack a ton when people buy a Quest 2 and then they put it away and the retention rate for their device ends up being just a closet device. I know that bothers him a lot, and he goes on to complain about how that's still a thing. I thought of you as soon as the second he said that. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I've been saying for a while, if I could replace my monitors... And I remember, I remember Aero. I remember our discussion that one stream about this whole rant I had about how I also want to replace my screens, right? Yeah. I told you this was a long stream, by the way, guys. I am almost at 2 hours. I'm still not done with everything. I'm going to make some timestamps for this stream, by the way. There will be timestamps for this stream, 100%, if you ever have to come back and you miss something. Ugh. Oh, this is an interesting thing. He talks about the concept of recording stereo video in a VR headset. Let me see if he talks about that more. Yeah, I don't know if he means stereo capture of what you're actually looking at in the headset, or like mixed reality stereo capture. I'm very curious. I imagine because he's saying taking targets of I imagine he's talking about actual stereo recordings of your inside the Quest headset, which is interesting. Have you already talked about Carmack's point in varifocal? Not yet. Not yet. We will get to that in a minute. Oh yeah, let's talk about high. He also mentions. Oh, this actually kills me. This actually kills me that he wrote this. Thank you, Zarathustra. Again, Qualcomm is coming out at least by tomorrow. merch.bradsmells.com. It'll be out. Where is it? Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. This kills me. So he talks about how they tease for the next high-end headset and how the tease for it was intentionally vague. They intentionally made it super vague, which is very interesting. That means when I hear something like that from someone like Carmack, that really makes me feel they haven't completely decided what they're gonna go with for the final design. He talks about the already confirmed features like eye and face sensors for social presence, high res, pretty much all the stuff that was pretty much expected. Pancake optics and better or ergonomics. But yeah, they intentionally made it vague. It really seems like that they might be waiting to decide. They honestly could be trying to see still if the OLED manufacturing line, the micro OLED manufacturing line for them that they've been trying to set up, is actually going to produce at a mass-produced scale. That might be why they made it vague, or it might just be they're waiting on the competition to be announced. Who knows? Congratulations! Thank you. All right. He also says an important purpose of high-end headsets is to detect the market. Carmack is always someone that is more focused on delivering the most consumer-friendly experience by like Oculus Go was his child. Oculus Quest 2 was also sort of the work that Oculus Go would lead to the Quest 2, and he really sees the benefit of making sure as many consumers get into VR as possible rather than making high-end headsets. But he kind of just sits back and says, well, at least we'll be able to see the market for them releasing a high-end headset, which is what Cambria is going to be. And they're going to see the reaction from consumers when they do announce and release that headset. And they're also waiting for, I also think they're waiting for Apple, because I think Apple worries them a lot. I really do. Even though the Apple headset's rumored to be expensive, but I don't know how expensive that'll be. But still, like, if people were going to be able to choose between two mixed reality based headsets that were high end, people are most likely going to choose Apple no matter what. That's just how the market kind of is already for anything. No one's gonna buy a Facebook portal over anything, like if Apple released something like that, you know. At present, it is more important for Quest 2 to improve the image quality of the optical system than to improve the resolution. So that's a really interesting comment. He says it's more important for the Quest 2 or Quest 2 line to improve the image quality of the optical system rather to improve the resolution. Man, when I hear stuff like that, that makes me really feel that they still are like sort of testing the idea of a Quest 2 Plus and a Quest 2 Pro, because they could literally release a Quest 3 with pancake optics, but an LCD display. They could literally do that. And the quality would be a lot better than with the current lenses, for sure. And then they could save the micro OLED for the Cambria model. I still think that's a possibility that we might see in the future. I really see that as a thing that is possible still, just not at the timelines I originally expected. Fresnel lenses is dying, guys. Like, the concept, at least for high-end, I don't even think, not even just high-end, but I even think a lot of low-end headsets, like, I really doubt a Quest 3 would use Fresnel lenses, like, at all. Because every company I talk to, they say that the biggest gap for people in consumer VR is comfort. And you don't want Fresnel lenses because that requires eye cups. And eye cups are not, they don't help for form factor and weight and stuff. So, yeah. Deca Gear is set to use Fresnel? I think so. I think that's what they were planning. They were also saying custom lenses, though. I don't know what they're gonna use because they haven't said a word in a while about their actual headset. So, imperfect zoom optics might be harmful. That's pretty obvious. He mentioned how it would be their first choice to use the device, the Quest device, their own camera for full body tracking. We've been seeing a lot of talk about the idea of using cameras on the headset for full body tracking. Well, guess what? Carmack literally said in these notes that it would definitely be their first choice doing it that way. They're not going to have external based full body tracking, most likely, ever. If they ever implement full body tracking, it would definitely be in the headset with the cameras in some way. I also think the possibility of the cameras built into the controllers could also do the full body tracking in some way. And a mirror. He didn't say anything about mirror, but that was that one patent. That was that one patent for sure. He talks about how he leans to a more open metaverse, but he also realizes that a centralized meta universe would have his advantage, such as in performance. He doesn't seem to like. He really just kind of complains a lot about Facebook's internal dialogue about the metaverse and stuff. It seems like. Oh, I love this. He talks about how he hates how consumers buy Quest 2s and then they make their headsets ugly. He can't figure out why. I could tell you why. And he wonders if it's a hardware problem or software problem. It is a hardware problem. The Quest 2 standard literally comes with like the worst strap I've ever seen on any VR headset. And your first party straps that are supposed to solve that problem, they break. So of course people are going to weird third party strap solutions and making them like Frankenstein projects. Yeah. The big uwu face is ugly. Anyway, two reasons for not launching a headset this year. Quest 2 took a lot of work and effort, apparently. So, and they're very happy with the success of it. That makes sense. But he said, okay, let me find it. He literally says it, guys. It freaking kills me because people literally yell at me. Hardware development takes a long time. We have multiple new headsets in the pipeline. This is our first year in a while without shipping a new headset. And yeah, they have multiple headsets in the pipeline. Notice how he doesn't say they have multiple prototypes. They have multiple new headsets in the pipeline. He does not say prototypes. Usually when you say multiple new headsets in the pipeline, that usually kind of says they have sort of a roadmap for planning to release them. Or like release the features that they have from those prototypes to consumer. Alright, that's pretty much all I wanted to cover. That's pretty much all I wanted to cover that I really care about for the Quest 2, or the Carmack speech. Yeah, just, that's pretty much all I want to talk about. There's a lot more here, and I'm going to post if you want to read everything he says, I'm going to post it again in chat. This is his text file. We just have a couple more topics, and then we're finally done. And then I can sleep, because I was not sleeping much last night. This was a lot of work. But I will be able to have a relaxing week, because I am traveling next week to California, and then Miami. The California trip should be especially fun. Alright, let's talk about a few other topics. 3M. 3M. You might have heard this company. They make a lot of sticky adhesive stuff for consumers, but they also do a lot of just stuff in general. They make tons of things. They have their hand in everything. They have their hand in literally everything. They announced a new reference design with curved lenses that are basically pancake optics. And it looks very similar to Cambria. I don't really think anyone would argue that this does not look like Cambria in a lot of ways. I don't really think... I'm not really sure if it's that this reference design was provided to Facebook and they tweaked it, or multiple reference designs look similar to this kind of headset in general. But yeah, 3M has finally announced their own Snapdragon XR2 based reference design. Now, before people get very confused, because I see a lot of hatred all the time for companies like Pico, I see people that are very uneducated about the topic, and they talk about how they are like, well, Pico clearly stole the design for the Quest 2 or whatever. That's not how it works. Snapdragon or Qualcomm and companies like Goartec and 3M, they are ODMs. They can create their own reference designs, and they can show these reference designs to companies, and the companies can license to take those reference designs and tweak them to and have them pretty much really close to ready for mass production scale. 3M is working with a company called Pegatron to do their mass production for any company that wants to make their own headset based on this reference design. But yeah, I mean, again, it uses pancake optics. I think this does use LCD displays though, and it looks like it really looks very similar to Cambria. But yeah, used to work for them. Very cool. They already talked about, I mean, every company's always working on the next stuff. I found multiple prototypes that seem to be unrelated to. I talked about, so when people are getting mad at me because I said that there was a C Clip and C Bright, and I based up the idea that there was a Quest 2 Plus and Quest 2 Pro, people were like, well, those are two different prototypes. Yeah, I know those were two different prototypes, but there was also two different prototypes with different naming schemes unrelated to that. One was called Unknown 1, that is in the public kernel, but we literally have, that must be like the super far one, or some test related to retina resolution that they showed off maybe. But there was another one called, what was it called? Eureka 865, which is unrelated to Cambria for sure. Absolutely unrelated to Cambria. I don't know if that is the prototype for Quest 3 or what, but it's very interesting. And C Bright and C Clips are clearly using the same baseline or same reference design or same R&D, but with different displays, pretty much. So this is also using pancake designs that are made by 3M themselves, or at least using polarizers made by 3M. Also, if you ever wanted to know how if you want to know how pancake lenses move the light, this is a really great video. I love this video. It's very rare to find good videos like this. So here's a standard pancake lens, a 3-stack, obviously. Well, kind of. So every lens has a reflective. Most pancake lenses have a reflective polarizer. So the display and a beam splitter. The display will send light out. It will bounce off here, and then bounce off here, and bounce right back into the eyes. And this is how they have very high clarity without a lot of the awful aberrations you would get from a lot of lens systems. They're very good. Very high resolution, yes. I love this. This is a great, I mean, it's so simple, but it's so great. Oh yeah, so this is interesting. I don't think anyone's going to do this, but this is very old prototypes from Half Dome. They kind of did this, but if you move the centerpiece here, you could actually achieve varifocal like this, with a motor. But what people are what people are mostly doing, because it's kind of loud and unreliable to have motor-based varifocal lenses, is this is the thing that's moving when you turn the diopter on these pancake lenses for people that wear glasses, so they don't have to wear glasses. You're literally twisting that, and this thing is moving between the two other lenses. Yeah, so that's how that works. If you're ever curious, it's very cool. I love this video. What is the best VR for finger tracking and content creation? Well, if you're gonna make videos where you talk while you play VR, literally Index is like the only one to go for, because they have good audio and they have good, yeah, it's really, their microphone is like still the best on the market. But you shouldn't buy an Index just for the microphone. though, I would say. Yeah, okay. We're gonna go through a few. Again, I like to post a ton of topics on my Twitter because I keep finding stuff, and there's some things that didn't even make it to the stream. We're gonna pretty much cut the stream short within like 10 minutes here. But there are some things I want to talk about that I posted on Twitter. I'm gonna make sure I covered everything. Oh yeah, so those textures we found weeks ago that I thought they were a white textures, they ended up being black. Well, they were able to get the model for Cambria with those textures, and this is running in the Quest a Quest environment, so you're able to see the actual models that was built for the idea of having the headset ready, which is interesting. The one thing I really wanted to point out of all these things is we got some good images. Even though these are like obviously very basic textures and pretty semi-basic models, I really doubt the actual lenses are going to derive that differently from the shape we see here. So keep an eye on this shape, right? Keep an eye. It's very, very tall, and they're kind of indenting toward the center. We know they're pancake lenses, where these are the Quest 2 lenses, which are not very tall. And the point they are tall is sort of in the wide peripheral. And we always hear, we constantly hear Boz talk about how they think vertical FOV is a lot easier. Well, just by the lens shape, it looks way clearer to me that there is going to be at least some benefit to vertical FOV just by looking at that. Okay, when I say cut it short, I mean I pretty much cover everything that is really important. Safari Technology Preview has a flag for WebXR hand tracking. I imagine this is related to the ventures that Apple's working on for their VR headset, because they will probably use hand tracking or have hand tracking support to do things. Here's some images of the RPARA 5K media viewer that Thrill got and MRTV got. It does exist. It does use real displays that are being mass produced. Oh, on November 12th, Valve is hosting a Steam Deck Q&A, and they're also going to include AMD is going to be there on that event, this free event that's going to be streamed live, and AMD is going to talk about their APU and what's called a deep dive. I am very interested in that that deep dive quite a bit, so that's cool. That's happening. Yes. Oh, this was a very stupid news that I found. There's a company called AdMix that raised $25 million to scale up in-game ads and prep for metaverse gaming. So there's third-party companies already that are not even related to Facebook that are getting $25 million from investors just to throw ads in your metaverse. Very, very cool. Very cool. Is that pretty much everything? Deca Brick. We kind of showed that off in one stream. Deca Brick. Deca Brick with the HMD controllers and Deca Move. Clearly related to Pimax, like what Pimax is doing with the Pimax VR station. I think it's basically a PC VR console. Basically a PC that is with an APU running Linux to achieve an affordable device so people can get into PC VR easily. That is likely what it is. And also, yeah. You're hoping for at least 140 FOV on an upcoming headset. I don't think the Cambria is going to reach that. I have no idea what the Deckard's FOV is going to reach, but I just know that they have some advanced lenses planned for that headset. They're doing stuff with they're just doing stuff with lenses that I don't see any other company doing. A lot of other companies seem to be using off-the-shelf lenses, or at least if they're not using off-the-shelf lenses, they're just kind of tweaking the design of those lenses a little bit. Whereas Valve has literally paid a company to build a manufacturing line that makes very fancy optics, very freaking fancy optics. Yes. Oh, here's a new thing. There was a blog post posted on the Oculus website that talked about this weird experience, and this was the first time we saw an image that says this down here. The Oculus hardware brand is absolutely dead, guys. It's freaking dead. They're gonna keep the Oculus name for the Oculus Studios, but not much else. There it is, MetaQuest 2. I posted that video, by the way, like right after I found out about them killing the Oculus hardware brand. I got a lot of angry comments about it. They were saying I was spreading misinformation, that they weren't actually... They thought I was confusing the new Meta branding for them killing the Oculus brand. But no, they actually did kill at least the hardware portion of the Oculus brand. Yeah. I think that's... And Goratech also has a huge nano imprinting production. I talked about this earlier in the stream, but I was told that Goratech, which is one of the main which is probably the main manufacturer for the Quest 2, has a huge nano imprinting production line that's expected to complete by the end of this year, which is that's a big deal. And I think nano imprinting is also needed for pancake lenses, even though it's like a very basic use case scenario for nano imprinting, that is something that's needed to be done. So if you're trying to mass produce something like that, you need this. So everything lines up. All right, I want to talk one more thing related to Deckard, because Z-Storm Games, that's actually in my chat, actually talked about a headset that I want to talk about too. You might not know about this headset, but I've been talking about a lot. I've been talking about a lot how AMD and Valve have been working together a lot for a lot of different projects, and how I even believe that AMD might have been the ones designing the backplane for Valve for the Imagine displays. Well, guess what? AMD has a huge background, and if you want to watch more about this headset, you can go to this video. But it's literally a headset with an AMD... I actually totally forgot. Well, it has an AMD processor in it. Let me get an image of it. It has an APU and an AMD processor in it, I believe. Okay, it has an SoC and an AMD FX80. This was in 2016 they did this, by the way. In 2016, this company did this, partnered with AMD, to do an x86 compute unit built into a headset. And this was before the Qualcomm XR stuff existed. This was before Valve even was trying to do this yet. This was something that was really ahead of its time, and AMD had their hands big in it. And like we see a lot of ventures with Valve and AMD, and Valve is interested in using AMD APUs for products. They have a lot of prototypes and concepts of using an AMD APU for split rendering, for a head strap design with an SoC, a Qualcomm SoC, and Qualcomm. It really feels like AMD has been wanting to do this for a while, and using Valve as their true next, like a true come to market with this concept. So, yeah, it's called the Sulan Q. Sulan Q. Anyway, yeah. I hope I can even afford Deckard. I will literally give away one of my kidneys for it. I hope I don't have to. But, I don't know. I think I really think, and this is very controversial, but I think, if it had everything I've been saying it has, I would pay a lot of money for it. Just the HMD already. I think they're doing just stuff that really drive the concept of VR 2.0. I think they are doing a lot of amazing stuff that is... There's not one thing I can think of that I think they're working on that I really don't want. Whereas like Project Cambria, which is even a high-end headset, there's a lot of stuff where I'm like, I don't really want that too much, possibly. I don't, it's not my focus, but like, yeah. Yes. Will Deckard be better than Index? Yeah, I would imagine so. I'm skeptical that XR2 can keep up. Yeah, we'll know more. I was told by someone that Qualcomm was working on a new XR chip. I was told this by someone. Take that with a grain of salt because I'm told a lot of things by people. But I don't know the timeline for that though. And who knows? Who knows? Who knows? Who freaking knows? That is just the way it goes. All right, everyone. That was a very long stream. Thank you for sticking with me. I'm going to take, let's just take the opportunity. I know I talked about so many topics. It was literally 2.5 hours of a bunch of different things. If there was anything that you want more clarification on, please ask me now. This is the time for questions, and I'll do my best to answer them. I'm ready. Do them now. Do them. Just do them. Anything. Anything. Do you think you'll be doing live stream? I will probably not. So here's what I do. This is what I plan. This is my game plan for CES, by the way. I do not plan to live stream directly from CES, but what I want to do, there's two options here. What I'm going to do, I'm going to definitely record everything that I come into contact with and do. And when I get, and the most likely plan is when I get back from CES, I'm going to have a actual stream or multiple streams where I go over all the clips I recorded and talk to you guys about it directly with a live chat. That is probably my plan, because that also gives me some time, like on the way home, maybe because it's very likely that I will get some information about stuff I see at the event from them, but won't have time to digest it till like I'm either home or like on the way home from CES, and then I'll have a lot of information for you, and we can go over all the cool stuff I see live on stream. So, are you coming to CES, C-Storm? Yeah, definitely. Wait, do you have a media pass? I don't know if I'm gonna go on the non-press days though, because I'm going with my wife, and we wanna visit things while we're in Las Vegas. So we'll see. I'm not sure yet. Oh, the SteamDB apps. So yeah, let's talk about the SteamDB apps a little bit. So one of them ended up being one of them, the more newer one, was confirmed to me to be related to the ET controllers, at least the driver and app that are the implementation of the drivers of these controllers for SteamVR. That was one of them. We're not completely sure what the older one was, the older app, or no, the newer app. So there was an older app that had an update, and that was the ET. But there was also a brand new SteamDB that was added that I was getting excited about. And I don't know what that is completely. No idea. No updates on that. But one of them was the ET stuff. I'm doing good. I'm really tired though, because this week has been like my first week back to full research mode, and there's just so much going on right now that and because I knew I wasn't going to be able to stream next week, I wanted to spend a lot of time this week on these topics, and I did. Yes. Oh, Carmack's varifocal comments. So yeah, Carmack's basically his comments on varifocal was he sees a lot of value for varifocal. He's just not sure if it's ready for what they're doing, pretty much. But he sees value in it. But there's also the thing too where as you get older, varifocal actually doesn't matter as much to you as you get way older. There's some weird reasons for that, but yeah. I don't know if he is at that point, but interesting stuff. Your thoughts on ET? I actually really think their design is really cool. You might think I'm really crazy, But there's a part of me that really wonders what it's like if the index controller just did not use the thumbstick and they went with their original plans of only having a giant touchpad with buttons. And this doesn't have buttons, but it has a touchpad on the top for your thumb. And that kind of makes me think about the old Knuckles prototypes that, I don't know. I am very odd in that opinion, though, with the joystick stuff, but yeah. Yeah, there's no trigger. There's not like any buttons on this. I think it's all like emulating buttons with like pressure and stuff. It's a weird controller, but I like it. I think it's cool to have very different things like this pop up in VR because I bet you there's going to be a use case scenario for it that's really good. I imagine Beat Saber players are going to love this thing, especially. This looks like the perfect Beat Saber controller if you play competitively. Second thoughts about Arapara? Well, I'm going to again. Next week. I'll be going to Thrill Seeker Media Group office, and there's a lot of headsets there, and including the Arapara. And I will comment about it more when I try the Arapara. Again, that is just the Meteor Viewer version, so it has its limitations. Are you working on a VR project beside your channel? I am planning to do. There is one VR project I'm working on in the background for Thanksgiving. I want to see how many people I can get into a Thanksgiving dinner table world. I might make in VR chat. I'm probably gonna make it even if it's very simple. And I want to see how many people we can get in that world for a giant Thanksgiving dinner group photo. And the main reason I want to do it is because we constantly see Microsoft Teams announce their Bitmoji type VR avatars. We saw Facebook show off their freaking boring avatars. And I really think, like, to take a giant picture of a giant group together on a Thanksgiving dinner table with, like, a ton of different VR chat avatars would be really cool compared to what we've been seeing. And, like, sort of a statement to that. Any thoughts of Phobia rendering for AR glasses? AR glasses are too far away for me to care about right now. The technology for really good AR glasses are just... I still like think 5 years, honestly. I don't really care about AR glasses. I think VR or AR through VR pass-through is going to be great for a while. And if they can also implement varifocal with that somehow, that would be amazing. I don't know how that works though. Please do it in Neos. I'm gonna do in VR chat this time, but I'm planning to do something in Neos for Christmas to make up for that. VR chat can support up to 80 people for servers or whatever, and Neos is not to that point yet. But I do want to do something for Christmas in Neos because that sounds more comfy. Their controller honestly looks very design over substance. I mean, I still think it's okay to do that. The fact that they're seemingly close to actually mass producing it or whatever. I mean, there's a lot of work that gets from design phase to mass production phase, and I gotta give them a lot of respect for doing something very different than whatever a lot of other VR controllers do. And I don't know. I think it's a cool concept. I really do. Bad mass balance. Yeah, the tracker is a little annoying probably for balance. Yeah. If you don't mind a penguin, I'll be there. Of course I don't mind a penguin, Eric. You're always welcome to any of my VR chat things or social VR things. The one with the Nolo tracker is Nolo tracker has always been garbage. I have never recommended Nolo tracked VR for anything. It's a very bad tracking system. It's not even by the way, the Nolo tracker one, it's not an AR Para with a Nolo tracker built in. It's just they sell a third-party Nolo tracking that's really meant for any VR headset or any 3DOF VR headset to try to shoehorn 6DOF in it, but it's always been really bad. Just really, really bad. What are you gonna make the VR chat the world in? I'm definitely doing the geometry in Source 2 because that's like the most comfortable head. That's the most comfortable place for me to make maps pretty quickly. And then I'm gonna export the geometry and put it into Unity and make a VR chat world with that. What about Chill Out VR then? I don't really care too much about Chill Out VR, unfortunately. There are a lot of social VR platforms all the time popping out, and I do try them, but if they're not really so the thing is, I mostly main VR chat or Neos. VR chat is very basic, very simple, not too many features, but it's easy to get into and it has a lot of player stability for that. But Neos has a ton of features that I don't really even want to care about. Something like Chill Out VR, which is like VR chat but with more features, because I think if I want to go to a social VR platform with a plethora of features, Neos is the go-to for sure. Um, I hope for better collaboration. There's a lot of collabs I think going on in the background for better competition. Like I say this a lot, but like seriously, guys, there's so many companies that are watching the VR scene, even giant tech companies, which I don't really like. I don't really like Apple that much. I think they're when they introduce their VR headset, it's going to continue their monopolistic ecosystem practices. But I can't deny that having giant companies who are literally been watching the VR AR scene and waiting for the perfect time to jump in, that time is very soon. And when they do jump in, it's going to improve a lot of the competition that we kind of suffer with right now, or at least the lack of that we suffer with. Why is there an emphasis in vertical FOV development? So here's the truth. I think the reason why Facebook has been so vocal about their big favoritism over vertical FOV over horizontal FOV is because I've read a lot of the reference designs for the pancake lens systems that a lot of headsets use, and they already have a focus on vertical FOV only. So it's my guess that Facebook is not really doing that much difference to the reference design for pancake lenses, and they're just like, oh well, let's just advertise vertical FOV. They're not doing too many things special with their lenses, guys. It looks very similar to all the reference designs I've seen for pancake lenses, especially when they talk about it. Yeah. Um, that Nolo tracker is the one they used to sell with Hallway. I mean, they tried to sell that Nolo tracker with so many headsets and like as an accessory. I know so many people that oh god, I pleaded with people not to buy the Nolo tracker years ago with like they tried to use it with like a Gear VR or like Google Cardboard or something. I told them don't do it, man. And that was like back when the Nolo tracker was like 100 to $200 or something. I was like, don't do it. You're so bad. And they did it, and guess what? They highly regretted it. And they couldn't sell it because no one wanted it. Chill Out VR is more performant though, a nice community. Well, like usually the smaller social VR platforms are generally nicer communities, but I don't actually go into public lobbies for really any social VR. I have a very good amount of friends who I can invite to join me for social VR stuff, like world hopping or just like really talking in social VR. And I never really care to join public lobbies, so yeah. Weren't Valve collabing with Apple on VR at some point? I'm not sure if they were collabing, but I know a lot of Valve employees that worked on Index, they moved over to Apple to work on Apple's hardware. So maybe that's what you're talking about. I'm not sure of any actual collaborations. What's your opinions on about this situation of Windows Mixed Reality? Um, well, really, the only actual sold mixed reality headset right now is the HP Reverb G2.1. And apparently they did improve the FOV range of the HP Reverb G2. If you heard of it, I talked about that in a stream last week. They updated their camera hardware, or at least they moved the cameras around to get better tracking FOV. But that doesn't really solve the issues with the tracking refresh rate. And really, that's the kind of the big problem. And I actually hate the Windows mixed reality software that's built in with it. Like when you launch, you have to launch the Windows mixed reality software with Steam VR, and like I genuinely just hate a lot of runtimes opening at once when I'm doing VR in general. So like, yeah, I like to have more like, I don't know. I know they don't want to only rely on Valve Steam VR, and that's why they make these other runtimes, but like, ugh, way adds way more friction to the experience. You only paid $79 for this crap, yeah. I am also surprised Magic Leap is still around. It seems like every time I hear about that company, it's all about the doom and gloom that's happening to them. And even with the Magic Leap 2, it doesn't sound like people are that they're not very, I don't hear people really impressed with their new announcement. They're more impressed with the fact that they somehow got more investors, which is really funny to me. Yeah, I don't hear that many good things about Magic Leap in general. But I don't know anything about them. I don't know if they are amazing. I've actually never tried a Magic Leap. And I probably won't be able to try Magic Leap 2 because that's just for a sector that I am not in. I'm going to buy a VR. Oh, whoa. Are you impressed by WebGL/WebVR yet? I think it's impressive, but it's not implemented in a lot of things yet. So it's hard to be impressed to buy it yet, I guess. There's not. I feel like a lot of people haven't really done much with WebVR. That could change anytime. I think WebVR would be a better standard for a metaverse than anything else, actually. But that requires like a reason for people to dedicate time to it. And I don't think there has been really anything like that yet. There was definitely a rumored Valve/Apple collab a little back. It's very interesting because I mean, it makes sense to me. I mentioned how the company Imagine Optics is the company that Valve funded to build a factory for them to build lenses. And a lot of the lens technologies that Valve patented related to this company, Apple has very similar patents actually to that. I have to almost wonder if there was originally a plan where they would both use these type of lens systems to drive down costs, because if they're both manufacturing and like buying the supplies for it, then it drives down costs for both of them instead of just Valve and this Imagine Optics company. That would be interesting actually if that's true. Never really thought about that. Will I try the links at CES? Probably, if it's there, right? I think the Lynx is awesome. I like it. Nothing else to say. It's honestly a very the lenses are the most impressive thing of the device for me. I think the lenses are like really the one thing that just like I look at them and I'm like, wow, that's crazy. Not to say that the whole package isn't amazing, but like, yeah, I think it's cool. Oh yeah, Eric Hartley in chat. So next week we have there's another big event happening. It's actually, I would say, way bigger than the display event I was just talking about. It's called AWE USA, and it has literally a ton of VR and AR companies presenting, like a ridiculous amount. And Eric Hartley is going. I am not going because look how much these tickets cost for a 2-day or 1-day pass. $500, and that doesn't count me staying at a hotel and everything. Like, ridiculous. But Eric's going, and he's going to report to all the things to me that I can now communicate with you on whenever the next stream is. And that's gonna be amazing. There's a lot of companies here. Oh, whoa! They changed their name. This used to say, I think this used to say Facebook. That used to say Facebook. They changed it to Meta already. Holy frick. Yeah, they're gonna be there. Very interesting. Meta. Oh my god, there's two metas. That'd be funny if they had their booth right next to each other. Wow, that's crazy. Um, wow, Microsoft will be there with some mixed reality development. That's very interesting. Are they just gonna advertise the HP Reverb? No, talking about Azure services. Huh. Interesting. Yeah, but I mean, look, there's a ton of companies going to be here, like a ridiculous amount. I feel like they keep adding more. Tilt 5 is going to be there. That's a cool company. I'm interested in their stuff. I think they're bringing the actual headsets there too. HoloLens, maybe. Those ETI controllers are, yeah, they're expensive. I don't really know who they're for. I don't really know, but like, again, I just think they're a cool concept. I am not going to buy them for myself to test out the cool concept, but yeah. Link said they would have the headset at all their partners' booths. Cool. I'm not buying another HMD unless it has freaking laser beams. Well, it's funny you mentioned that because there are display systems related to what you're talking about. Laser beam scan displays. When is the Imagine production announcement? Well, oh, that's something I should talk about. Imagine is expected to announce quarter 3 earnings. Quarter 3 earnings next week. It was the last. Well, I guess it was in September is when they reported that they were working with the company, the 4K company, to look into mass producing the 4K displays, and they said during that it would be they were planning the second half of this year is when that would be ready. They didn't say much about it in the DSCC at all, but maybe they will mention it more in this earnings call next week. We will see. Yeah. You're most excited for Niantic's Lightship ARDK? Yeah, I am too. I think they'll do a great job. Um, I'm actually shocked that Apple didn't buy Niantic, honestly. That seemed like that would have been like a huge company for them to purchase with their ventures, but yeah. Was it ET? Yeah, the Blue Acer headset. I had a friend that had that headset. The Blue Acer headset was like $140 with controllers at one point, which is like still probably the best value of any VR headset ever existed. Unless you buy like a used Quest 2 around that price. Yes. Oh, you have? Whoa, you're a beta tester for Till 5. No way. It's Oh, I'm so jealous. Dude, that's so cool. Oh, I'm so jealous. That's awesome. Yeah, guys, if you never heard of Tilt 5 and you're really into board games, look up Tilt 5 as soon as I end the stream. It's so cool. A former Valve employee spearheaded that company. So if you're a Valve fan, that's already enough for you to check it out. But it's very, very cool stuff. You don't have room for the board for Tilt 5? I would make I wonder if you like hung it up on your wall, how the headset would react to that. Have like literal projections off of your wall from the board. You can, it works. Oh, that's sick. Oh no. That's so cool. Oh my gosh. All right, everyone. I think that's it. Is that three? Oh, yeah, we're pretty much 3 hours. That's cool though. You can do that till 5. Very nice. All right, everyone. Bradsmells.com if you want to support my ventures. This was an exhausting week. I hope you learned a lot. I learned a lot this week. I'm gonna tell you, I learned a lot this week, and so you probably should have learned a lot too, because oh my gosh, my brain was pulsating with all the knowledge. I just kept shoving more in with a shovel, patting it down, keep it in there, delete some unuseful stuff. All right, everyone. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you.